Hi, welcome back to the Black Spruce Knitting Podcast. My name's Allie. I live in central Vermont on Abenaki land with my partner Chris and our dog Darwin. And this is my knitting podcast. I haven't made one in about a month, and I wasn't knitting for a couple weeks because I was working on some other projects. I was doing some spinning, some dyeing, but I forced myself to actually just like get back into knitting more, and I'm really glad that I have. So I finally have some things to share with you. I'll talk more about the other projects at the end of the podcast if you're interested in that, but first I'm going to share an FO and a couple works in progress. So if that's what you're here for, I'll talk about all of that first. So first I'll just briefly mention what I'm wearing, which is the star-crossed pullover by Jacqueline Cieslak. It's a big, comfortable, oversized pullover. It was only my second colorwork project, so I definitely would say that the tension on the colorwork is still a little tight, but I'm very happy with it. I knit it in the original, like the suggested yarns, which were Spincycle Dream State in Mississippi Marsala and Jill Draper Make Stuff. I can't remember what the colorway was. So it was definitely a more expensive project, but I think it was like it was the middle of the pandemic, or really the early part of the pandemic when I ordered the yarn. And I think I was like, I'm never going anywhere again. So it felt like money well spent, and the yarn is gorgeous. I would love to knit something else out of the Jill Draper Make Stuff because it's just like, it's the most beautiful tonal yarn. So, you know, this sweater is knit bottom up. It has color work on the bottom. You do a 3-needle bind off, and then you can pick up the sleeves. And I think there's a couple different options. I actually didn't go for too much ease. I don't remember which size I made, but I know that I didn't go for the suggested amount of ease. But I'm very happy with how it turned out, and it's a wonderful sweater to wear. So that's what I'm wearing today. And now I'd like to show you my FO, which is the Kajo shawl by Anna Johanna. This was actually a mystery knit along. I'm not doing the shawlography, the Stephen West mystery knit along. I'm having a blast watching everyone else do it. I love seeing the colors that people picked. I love watching everyone talk about the clues. But I think that Stephen West patterns are a little bit too, I was watching the Love Stitch podcast and she mentioned the word graphic, and I think they're a little too graphic for me. But I love Anna Johanna's patterns, and I want to knit more of them. I find them to be very romantic and feminine. And so this was her mystery knit along shawl this year. So the one modification that I made for the shawl, and I'll put a picture so you can see, I think the pattern as written is gorgeous, but I knew that with that kind of like scalloped edge, I just wouldn't wear it as much. It's just not my style. And so what I did is I added this kind of, just sort of like a straight edge. And I just went back and forth and kind of increased and did a little bit of a fade, and then I bound off in the I-cord bind off. And I love everyone else's shawls. I think it's a beautiful pattern. I would really recommend it. But personally, I just knew it would be a little bit more my style this way. So that's what I did. I'm getting more comfortable making modifications, which is pretty exciting. And so, this is what my finished project looks like. And I'm obsessed with it. It's a really fun project. One of my favorite parts, and I've mentioned this before, but one of my favorite parts is that for this middle, you're rolling a 6-sided die to see if you're gonna do a color pop or not. And I really liked that. I play a lot of dice related games, including Dungeons and Dragons, so I thought it was really fun to have that. And also everyone's shawl looks different. And Kajo is inspired by like the sun peeking up during sunrise and having bright colors over buildings. And so I love those like little peaks of color. This was also my first time doing an I-cord bind off, and I loved it. I thought it was fun to do. And I think that it makes a really pretty effect. It's like nice and stretchy. So I would definitely use an I-cord bind off again. I really liked knitting this. Once I like kind of put my mind to it, it didn't take too long. It's just getting cold. I think we're gonna have our first frost tonight, when I wear it, I just feel like an ice princess, which is always how I want to feel. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited. This is only the second time that I've finished a shawl. Trying to think about what else I want to say. Yeah, it's garter stitch. It's squishy. It's not that complicated of a pattern, but there's definitely some unusual shaping, you know, and I think I definitely learned some things. So yeah, you know, she says that it's best if you have two colors that more or less fade together and then 1/3 like color pop. So the yarns that I use, this is Less Traveled yarn in their Paloma base in their Alchemy of Herbs colorway. And I love this color. I am tempted to knit a whole sweater with this colorway at some point. This is Yakima from Plymouth Yarns in teal, and it's like a tonal teal, although it has yak in it. It is a sport weight, but it worked even though the other two are fingering weights. And then this was my own hand-dyed yarn that I dyed on a base that I got from Dyer Supply, and it's got some cashmere in it, so it's pretty soft, and all three of the yarns aren't just wool, and they have like a nice drape and softness. And I have leftovers. You know, I can't find the teal, but you know, enough that I could do something with this at some point. Maybe it will go into a scrappy project. I knit this on, I want to say size 4 needles. It's blocked, it's washed, ends woven in, ready to wear. It's quite long, and so it works really well as a scarf. It's not too deep. I've only knit one other shawl, which is that I knit Find Your Fade by Andrea Mowry back when I was like getting back into knitting, and it's huge. It's like too big to wear. So it's a perfect size. Yeah, happy with it. A+ project. So that's my one finished object. I have made some progress on the Fort sweater by Jared Flood, which I am knitting in Spincycle Lark. And in my last podcast, I talked a little bit about why I'm not gonna say too much about the yarn. I'm not gonna link it. If you are interested in reading more, you can just sort of like Google Spincycle. I bought 2 sweater quantities because it was on sale from a store that was trying to unload their stock. Firefly Fibers was the store I got it from. So this is my progress. This is a sweater that I'm knitting for Chris. And it's a really simple stitch pattern. It's checkerboard stitch. Obviously, I don't want to say too much because it's a paid pattern, but it's really like knit 2, purl 2. And it's been fine to knit. It hasn't been, I mean, it's like kind of like knitting a sweater that's all in rib, except sometimes you're switching. It does have these like lovely details, and it's a tubular cast on. So Jared Flood, who started Brooklyn Tweed, I read his blog all the time before he started the company, back when I was a teenager. I love his masculine. Yeah, if Anna Johanna is like a master of like feminine clothing, I think that Jared Flood is like a master of masculine clothing. His attention to detail and his style, it's just so beautiful. And so I'm excited to finally be knitting one of his sweater patterns. When I made the last podcast, I was like, I know it's a Brooklyn Tweed pattern, but I don't know who wrote it. This is a Jared Flood pattern. I'm actually taking a little bit of a break from the body because I'm knitting the sleeves. I've got stitch markers from Knit Boop and from Woollen Forest on it. If a pattern has the sleeves knit separately, I actually get excited. I really like when you knit the sleeves separately, even though I also like doing top down, because you can knit them 2 at a time, which is my preference for knitting anything that you need to do 2 of that are identical. I think that's actually why I haven't been working on my socks, is because I've been doing them 1 at a time instead of 2 at a time. So I need to go back to 2 at a time. If you haven't tried it, I'd recommend trying it. It's a little bit to like wrap your brain around, and then it's very easy, and you know that things are going to be identical, and when you're done with one, you are done with both of them. So I just started the sleeves, and I think I'm going to finish these and then finish the body. So I would say I'm maybe 50%, 40% done. I don't think it's gonna take too much longer. And like I said, I love the details. I love the tubular cast on. I love this nice ribbed section that I think is gonna be under the arms. Yeah, Chris wanted this a little bit oversized, so I'm knitting a size medium to have a little bit of ease because the last sweater I knit for Chris, sadly, was just a little too tight. So I think it'll be really cozy. Hopefully it's not too big. I think it'll be okay. So yeah, this is my fort sweater. I'm hoping to have this done by the next podcast. I'm working on that pretty hard. I wasn't going to cast on another sweater, but what happened was I had all of this hand spun and I had those two skeins. I actually showed them in my last podcast, like that I had dyed from Knit Picks Wool of the Andes, which is only $5 for 100 grams of roving. So I dyed the roving and then I spun them on my e-spinner. This was before I set up the Ashford wheel that I was given. And I really liked the hand spun and I didn't want to put it in an accessory like a shawl because I know I don't wear those as often as I wear sweaters. I wear a knit sweater every day that I can. And I don't have that many knit sweaters, so I wear a lot of the same sweaters. But so I was thinking maybe I could use some of my hand spun in a sweater if I combine it with some other things. And so I knit this swatch. So this one is a hand spun and this one's a hand spun. And then there's a lot of like scraps and random yarn. So this is the Hudson and Westco Forge from my Nurtured pullover. This is Jill Draper make stuff from this one. This is Shelter from the Marshland that I knit for Chris. I have some Let Lopey in here that I'm not actually gonna put in the sweater because the texture is too different. This was one of my first hand dyed bulky yarns. It's this, which when I dyed it, I was like, I'm never gonna use it, but I actually like the way that it looked in this swatch. And so I thought, why don't I just knit a sweater with stripes and it will be my Scrappy Handspun Sweater. I'll put in scraps and I'll put in handspun. And I thought that this looked kind of cool. And, you know, I like to sort of see what type of knitwear people are buying these days. Obviously, when you knit things, you want them to be timeless since you're putting time and maybe some money into it. But I do also think this kind of looks like on trend, which is sort of cool. And so I thought I'm gonna knit a sweater. And I started knitting a sweater from the bottom up on size 10 needles. And I didn't like how I did some of the stripes, so I started taking it out, and then I also realized it was too big, and I was like, I think I'm gonna knit it from the top down. So I started again, and I also decided to do bigger stripes, and this is what I have so far. So it's a raglan with a folded over collar. And this is that Hudson and Westco, but held with some fingering that I dyed for kind of a marled effect. And then this is a whole skein of hand dyed here. And I love hand dyed hand spun yarn. And I love how it looks. So I'm really glad that I decided. I've got some of the Shelter coming in next, and I think I'm gonna be able to split for sleeves soon, and I'll be able to try this on and make sure that it's the right size. I want it to be oversized, and then I'm gonna decrease rapidly. I'm not using a pattern. I'm gonna decrease rapidly for the sleeves. I probably won't decrease for the sleeves, and then for the waist. So it'll have that kind of, that sort of like, that cute silhouette, I'm hoping. And yeah, I've got, where is it? I've got this yarn, I've got all those gray yarns, I've got some browns, I've got a black, and I also, if I can find it, oh yeah, here we go. I also have this whole other skein of hand spun that's gonna go in. So I think it's gonna be so cute. I think I'm gonna be not working on it for a while because I got accepted to a test knit, which I'll talk about. But it's kind of a fun, easy, mindless project that, yeah, it'll be cool to have a sweater with hand spun. You know, this was some of my first hand spun, and I'm surprised at how consistent the gauge is. I will say, since I'm using different weights of yarn, the sweater is gonna be like a little, it's gonna be all over the place, but I'm okay with that. I don't know. I definitely want to knit a whole sweater out of hand-dyed handspun at some point. I don't know when I'll get there. So yeah, I'm really excited. I think it's gonna be cute. Bulky kind of throw on. I think I might look a little bit like a ski sweater, but I think that's okay too. I go skiing a lot in the winter. And also I didn't spend like any money on it. It's all scraps plus like the $5 that I spent for each of 2 things of roving. I'm trying to spend less money on yarn. It's going so-so. So those are like my projects. But I've been doing a lot of other things as well. And one thing that I've been doing is I've been trying to design. I really want to design knitwear. But it's kind of hard. It's sort of intimidating. So I'm really always impressed by everyone who designs. But I was kind of brainstorming and I decided I wanted to try to design a yoke sweater inspired by the herbs that are drying in my kitchen right now. I have calendula drying, I have sage and mint. We didn't do an herb garden because we moved this year. So it was just the stuff that was already growing. Next year, I think we're gonna plant a lot of herbs. And you know, I live in the mountains. And so I was brainstorming what I thought maybe it could look like, although maybe there would be something on the sleeves and the bottom as well. And I was kind of thinking about what I want a motif to look like. So it would be like repeating with like leafy bundles and then a flowery bundle and then kind of like a design. And so I went into there's like a free charting program and I like played with charts for a while. And then I knit up a little swatch. And I used the brown, the white, and the greenish yellowish color are from a Party of 5 sock mini set from Sweet Georgia Fibers that I got like a year ago. I think it's like Tofino Nights maybe. And then this green is like an alpaca blend that my brother got for me. And so I'm really happy with it, honestly. I think it's really cute. I think it's a really fun design. And you know, I didn't knit the whole way around, but there'd be another one of these and then it would be this. So it'd be like 3. Yeah. I think this was knit on size 4 needles and this is fingering weight yarn. This might turn into a yoke sweater at some point. At first I was like, well, that's nice, but I don't know if I want to go through all of the effort of making it into a pattern. And my friend Audrey saw it and was like, I love it. I want you to make me that sweater. So I might make it into a yoke sweater for Audrey. So I'm calling it like the Mountain Herbs motif. Yeah, and I'm really fond of it. It definitely feels like it expresses who I am and what I would want to say as like a designer. So it was cool to take a stab into designing color work. I don't know what's going to happen next. This definitely is going to be on the back burner for a while because I want to finish the projects I have now. I want to knit a sweater for my dad. I was accepted into a test knit. My spinning wheel has a crack in it because it's an old wheel from I think like the 70s or the 80s, and I need to wood glue it. But once I have wood glued it, I'm going to be spinning more. So look out. I will keep you all updated as I try to knit a Mountain Herb pullover for my friend Audrey. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really happy with how the motif turned out. My background is actually in drawing and printmaking, and I haven't been doing those as much recently, and so I've wanted to sort of bring my drawing, my like, I wouldn't say skills, my drawing sensibilities into knitting. I love knitting from patterns, but I feel like a lot of what I'm doing right now is trying to move towards figuring out how to make my own designs. So yeah, that's kind of a cool thing. I have plans to make a design for my brother with his dog. He has that really sweet little dog, Leon, who was in my second episode, like at the end. Do like a really big Leon face and like a big cool sweater. I want it to look, I don't know. I have an idea for it, but again, that's down the road. I have more ideas than I have time because I do have a job as well. Although I wish I could just knit all the time. Oh wow. So those are kind of knitting wise what I've been working on. I think I'm going to talk about acquisitions and then talk about a spinning project a little bit because it was my first wheel spin, and then that will be all I have to share with you. So acquisitions, I was selected for a test knit. I'm really excited. I've applied for a few and not gotten into them, which is, you know, I understand. I need to take better pictures and put them on Instagram. I'll share my Instagram with you, but I don't update it very much. So I was really excited that I got chosen for one, especially because I'm making more of an effort. I know that pattern designers who work really hard on their patterns hope to have really nice photos come out of test knits too, because it helps promote the pattern. And so it's a beautiful pattern called the Asteria pattern by Rachel Raimo, who goes by the handle Maven Crafted. I bought some of her yarn. I'm going to be knitting it next month. I bought her Hanukkah sock set because she's Jewish and I'm Jewish. And there's like never Hanukkah themed things. It's always Christmas. We'll get to that. That will be next month. But I'm a really big fan of hers. And she made this gorgeous sweater and I'm so excited to test it. And I went to the yarn store and I was looking at yarn and I found this, which is Malabrigo Arroyo. The colorway is Chircus and it's this greeny brown. And I just was like, oh, that's beautiful. And the sweater, I just think it would be perfect for this pattern. And it was in the DK section. But when I got home, I Googled it and it turns out it's DK/sport, which makes sense because it wasn't that expensive. I got 3 skeins to knit my size. They're each about like $3.35, I think. 335 yards for 100 grams, and each was $20, so $60. To me, that's like mid-priced. It's not as expensive as if I had done indie dyed yarn, but also more expensive than a lot of commercial companies. But I was like, oh no, is this sport weight? But I think I'm gonna try to make it work. I have some time before the deadline, so I'm gonna knit a swatch and make sure I can get gauge, since that's really important for a test knit, because I love this color and I already purchased the yarn. So we'll see. I hope it works out. I hope I can get gauge and that I can knit a sweater and share it with all of you. It's a beautiful design. I'm really excited. That probably will be one of my 2 like biggest, I think the 2 things I'm gonna be focusing on probably will be the fort sweater because I just wanna get it done so Chris has a nice sweater to wear, and the test knit. I'm gonna take a break from other projects for a while. So I bought this at a store in the city where I work, which is like the only city in Vermont, Burlington. But there's a store in my town, but I went in and I couldn't find any DK yarn that I had liked, but I did want to buy something. And so I got this from Songbird Yarn and Fibers, and it's their Red Winged Blackbird colorway. I need to look up, I'm actually not sure. I'm making an assumption. I think that this person might be in my area, but it's a sock base. And I'm going to knit Chris a pair of socks, and I love this. Red-winged blackbirds are one of our favorite birds. We see them all the time around here in the summer. My parents have a lot of these by their house because they have ponds in the back. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just really excited. I think it's really cute. I think this will make a little lovely pair of just vanilla socks probably for Chris. Maybe it will be a holiday present. Chris celebrates Christmas and I celebrate Hanukkah, so we celebrate both. So Christmas. I think Hanukkah's really early this year, so a Christmas present would be better because I'll have more time to knit it. So yeah, another acquisition. I have been trying really hard to knit from my stash recently, but I didn't have a sweater quantity of DK weight yarn, so I had to go buy something for the test knit. I have like one skein left over from another sweater, which to me feels successful if I'm buying for projects. I definitely have 2 sweater quantities, one in worsted, which is the Quince & Co. for my dad's sweater, and then I have a sweater quantity of the Nash Island, which is a sport weight, which is going to be my Fumber. My stash isn't actually as big as I thought it was, which to me is a good thing. I don't want to accumulate too much, even though I love sometimes just buying beautiful yarn. But I'm trying to get it so that I'm selecting yarn for projects instead of having yarn and struggling to come up with a project to use them for. I can spend hours looking for the right project for a yarn. I don't know about you. So those are my acquisitions. And the only other thing I wanted to show you was this skein of handspun that has not been washed yet, but I dyed this. This was another one of those Wool of the Andes rovings, so it's only $5. I'm going to be hopefully spinning more local roving soon, but I'm still improving my spin. So this was my first also spin on the wheel. And I dyed it for my friend E. E said that they wanted blues, and like not greeny blues, but like true blues, which is not a color that I feel like I understand or know very much about. So I tried my best. I just think I'm better at greens. And I'm really happy with how it came out. It's definitely, I would say it's maybe like a DK weight. Maybe even worsted, comparing it. I don't know, it's a little thick and thin. I'm getting better at consistency. This is definitely like the most consistent yarn I've spun yet. I'm still getting better at spinning. And so yeah, I think E, who's an amazing knitter, will do something lovely with this, and I'm excited to wash it and send it to them in Philly. And then it will live in its new home. So I discovered through this process that I really, really, really love dyeing and spinning for friends. There's something about it where it feels like you're just putting love into the act of spinning. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. We had visitors from Philly and I meant to send it back with them, but I forgot to. We used to live in Philly, but we're from New England. So yeah, if you're just starting spinning and you're working with a drop spindle, don't give up, it gets easier. I found it really difficult at first. I still would not say I'm experienced. I would still call myself a beginner, but I'm having so much fun. I love to spin so much. So yeah, I wanted to share it with you because it was made with so much love. And I think that's all I have. So if you've watched this, thank you so much. If you're knitting something, I would love to hear about what you're knitting. If you're doing something fun these days to celebrate fall or spring, depending on which hemisphere you're in, I would love to hear about that. Have you seen the movie Dune? I'm gonna go see Dune today. Hope it's really good. Yeah, anything that's up, I would love to hear. It's been really joyful to be interacting with folks. So thank you so much for watching my video, and I'll see you next time.